Hello and welcome back. My name is Brent Bergherm, and today we're going to take a look at another NEOWISE picture. This one I did just last night. I've done a couple of these where I'm doing a time-lapse, where I've got the camera set up and I'm just having it shoot at intervals. And I did this with my Sony a6400, and it's got an intervalometer, and I just set it to put a few seconds between each shot. And here, let's take a look in Lightroom and continue on. This is actually the first time I've actually looked at these images. I found the starting point of this, and now I'm just going to kind of go fresh. So you're going to get everything from start to finish on how to assemble this type of time lapse. So let's jump into Lightroom now and start taking a look. So this is the first of the series of all these images, and there's about 300 and some images, so this is going to take quite a while to export when I do that export, and I'll certainly save you from that. But let's take a look at some of the technical qualities of the image first. We're going to hop over to the develop module. You can see I was at 1600 ISO. We did 50 millimeters on this crop sensor camera, f5.6, and then 10 seconds exposure. When we're looking at 10 seconds exposure, we do get a little bit, with that length of a lens, we do get a little bit of that little trail going on. I figured since I'm doing a time-lapse video, I wasn't going to concern myself so much with these trails happening a little bit because that's in a video, so it's going to be okay. The other thing I want to make sure I do is I have nice and sharp foreground, and that is definitely a good sharp foreground. So as I was setting this up, I was making sure that definitely the foreground was sharp. The stars are sharp. Now this is very far away. It's only 50 millimeters. It should be really easy. But when I was using a longer lens, for sure, I did have a little bit of separation in the depth of field there. All right, so here's the comet, of course. And as we transition through, it's going to come down and come over this structure. I would, in a still photo, I would worry myself about these power lines. But in this session, I'm going to just live with the fact that they're there and not worry about them. Another thing I should probably tell you about is as I was shooting this, I was also doing some light painting with my other camera and my other setup, and so some of these frames are actually going to be rather problematic. We're going to see some bright, things flashing in as we play the video. So my goal is to be doing what we can also to get rid of that stuff as well. So we're going to address that too, but that's going to be done at the very end. So if you see that happening where we see some bright stuff and whatever else coming through, we're going to take care of it, and we're going to try and mitigate that as best we can. All right, so as I get back into Lightroom and I'm developing this image, there's not a whole lot that I really feel that I need to do. The color of the sky feels great. There's nothing wrong with it too much. I'll probably just go ahead and do a little bit of saturation just to bump it a little bit more, because I know when it gets darker, we're going to lose some of that anyway. And then I probably want to bring in a little more warmth. So I'm going to cool out the blue just a hair. And then let's bring in a little bit of magenta as well, so it feels a little more warm and fuzzy and cozy and all that stuff down there on the horizon. And I'm tempted here to bring down my whites slider or my highlights slider so I can darken this area a little bit. But we have a transition where we're getting much later. This was over about an hour or so. I'll take a look at the timestamps maybe a little bit. But we have a bit of a transition, and so I don't want to get too terribly picky on things. Plus, if I do that, I'm going to diminish the view of the comet. And I know that comet is going to come in a little more prominently as we go through. So let's now scroll all the way to the edge, to the end, I should say. And we're going to synchronize these things. And a lot of these are checked, but we only modified a few of them. So let's go ahead and synchronize them. And then what we're going to look at after, you can see how it says pasting settings up there. It's working. There's lots of images, 356 photos in total. So there's lots of images for it to transfer those settings to. And, here's towards the end of the shoot when it was just extremely dark. And so I might need to take care of these a little separately and maybe process these a little differently, or even just take these out altogether. We can see the comet here is, transitioned to way over here from over in this area. And so I have to kind of make a decision, where do I want to end this item? Where do I want to call it quits on this video? And I might do it somewhere in this area here where I still have a little bit of ambient brightness coming back several images worth. Got a little bit of ambient brightness still. Yeah, it's not too bad. But then again, I might want to just go ahead and change the exposure here, synchronize it out, and see how it affected those first images. Those first images will be very bright, but again, this is all about that transition, and I knew I was going to have this issue going into it, but I have some flexibility in playing with this. So let's just see what we can do here. We're going to go ahead and brighten this up by about a full stop, and that's not bad. I do like how that's coming through. And this might be too where I want to go then, and let's see here. We're going to look at the detail, and I might bring in a little bit of noise reduction. Just a hair, not too much. Maybe take it up to about 20 or so. 16, that looks pretty decent. All right, don't feel like I need too much color noise reduction, so I think 25, which is the Adobe standard, is fine for that. All right. And that looks pretty, I like how that's coming together. But again, let's take a look now at the color too. This is really rich in those warm colors. And so this is all about balancing. I set it for one thing to begin with, but I need to know where it's going to go. And I could set this to be a certain color temperature, and I could set those to be a certain color temperature, but I don't want it to have any blockiness, any choppiness going in. So I'm going to try and do what I can to be striking that balance and getting the best of all worlds, really. And so I'm going to take a little bit of that magenta back out. I won't take it all out. But then really the biggest one here is going to be the blue slider, because I do feel that's a little too extra yellow. You know, if I wig it out and I go like this, then that's just probably too much. Another thing I could do that is kind of interesting, if I were to convert this to a black and white image, and then I go down here to split toning, and then I set my hue in the shadows to roughly some kind of blue color, and then I bring up that saturation, I can kind of give it this overall cool tonality, and I totally do away with any color information that's in the image, and I'm bringing forward just this fake color, as it were. And then, if I wanted to also maybe bring in the highlights kind of a warm hue and bring that saturation in like mad, now these stars are coming in sort of yellowish in tonality, and then I can fiddle around with this balance slider, and so we can gravitate more towards the yellows, more towards, maybe that shouldn't be yellow, maybe that should be orange there. All right, and so we can kind of fiddle with it that way as well. But it does bring a bit of a kind of an idea of fakeness to the whole idea. So in general, we want our stars to be white. Sky being blue, certainly that makes a lot of sense. So maybe we can just bring the saturation back a little bit. But it does kind of reduce the overall authenticity of the image. So let's try and make a decision based on it being a color image first, and then see where we go based off of that. All right, so maybe my saturation should come back down, and just as we come back in later, it's just a little too much. Let's go ahead and synchronize this, and then go back to the beginning and see what happens with those pictures. Now this was 1812, so anywhere in that neighborhood, I can go back and analyze that again. So as I go back to the beginning of the series, here we go. Let's maybe take this one now. We can see how much brighter, it's coming through, much more blue for sure. And this is the kind of thing too where on the tail end of things, if we want to enhance our saturation but not the yellows and everything like that, then we can come in, we can look at this HSL, we can look at saturation. And if we wanted to make blue a little more rich there, and then we can make our blues a little less dominant there, something like that. Now let's synchronize those out. Now the reason I do that is because on those later images, there's not much blue there. So these items are not going to affect what's down the line. So it's going to darken this already out of the gate, but then as we go through it, the blue darkening is going to lose its effect naturally as the blue is lost naturally. See, as we come through here, yeah, it gets darker and darker because the exposure is darker, But we're also going to end up losing, oh, we got some kind of airplane coming through, all right. We're also going to end up losing our saturation just because we lose our blue just naturally as well. So I'm kind of going through about every 20 images or so and just kind of taking a quick spot check, seeing if I like it or not. Here's one of those where I was painting, in the foreground area, and then we have another airplane flying by, so that'll be interesting. Items like airplanes and such, I'm not going to worry about those, but this I should be able to get rid of fairly easily and not have that bother us. That's an interesting phenomena, what's happening there. It's not in the thumbnail down here, but there we go. It fixed itself. All right, let's get another 20 or 30 images down the line and see how we're coming along. Looking pretty good, looking pretty decent, I think. So far, I like this. The points of light are coming in pretty good. And what I think the last thing I might end up doing is bringing in some highlights here and maybe even just some whites to really pop out these stars down here where it's dark. And again, I just have to think about balancing that with the images at the beginning of the series because I don't want that to be too terribly obtusely bright. And again, right now I'm paying attention to the color in the background. Is this acceptable? Basically, I've got the Tri-Cities region as its glow in the background here. That's why we have this glow on the horizon. All right, I think I need just a hair more on the exposure. I'm going to do 1 1/4. There we are. And then I'm feeling a little bit too green again as I brighten that, and now it's coming in a little bit too green. So I'm going to go back to a little bit of magenta, and then I'm going to bring in a little bit more on the blue side of things. And then what I think I'm going to do too, I'm going to come back in here on the HSL. See, I've got the blue coming in at negative luminance, but plus on the saturation. That's what I had set previously. What I think I want to do is I want to take down the saturation of this area just a hair. I find it to be a little bit too rich for my liking. And then probably take it down overall. All right, that's coming okay. This is just the kind of thing, I don't know, it's coming in a little bit, still a little bit green here. The only way to counteract that is to bring in a little more magenta kind of a thing. I could come in here on the saturation. I could take our greens or just run this again and just figure out where is that. See, it's greens and aquas. Pull down that just a little bit. Okay, and let's try and synchronize those again. Get those synced throughout. I'm going to run to the end now and see where we're at. Oh yeah, this is coming out pretty good. I really like this, and I can keep a nice long transition, I think. Gorgeous. This is really nice. Oh, another airplane coming in. Yeah, sweet, sweet. Very nice. Coming together really well. Now let's go again and look at our beginning of the thing. This is still nice. I really do like this. Obviously very bright as I started the shoot. There we go. Let's try and look at our timestamps really quick. And I don't even know if the clock was accurate here. Yeah, it was. So 9:52 is when I started shooting. And then about 10:53. So right around the course of an hour this took to make these images. So we were getting them quite frequently, but over the course of an hour, the comet moved, or the Earth moved that much, and so the comet moved in the sky that much. All right, now it's time to take these and export them. If I've got it balanced out where I've taken a look at the settings and I've made sure they work for the various lighting conditions that we had as it was changing from one time frame to the next, it's time to export these. And I'm going to certainly show you how I do that, but I'm going to save us the time it takes to sit through all that, and we'll come back then once all of that is done. So let's take a look over here on the export function. I'm going to go ahead and just put this on my desktop, But also what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and leave my signature on there. That'll be in every frame, so it's not going to be a problem. It'll be limited to 1080 pixels tall, so I certainly could make this very large and have ultra resolution, but for purposes of putting this online, etc., I'm going to go ahead and limit it to 1080 tall for right now. And then, of course, you just do it some other way if you want to do it again, but higher resolution. You set whatever resolution you want to have happen there. I'll go ahead and keep the sharpening, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it low just so it doesn't overcook any of these stars. It might be tempted to do that, but really reducing the resolution, that's going to be probably good enough for us. We will probably lose some of the very smaller stars that are out there because we're decreasing the resolution, but we'll definitely keep the major stars and we'll keep the comet pretty well. And then I'm just going to put this on a folder that will be on my desktop. So let's go desktop, and I'll just say, I'll call it NEOWISE. Actually, I'm going to call it NEOWISE 3 for some reason. All right, we're going to hit create. I'll do a JPEGs folder so I can have a separate subfolder already built in, and we'll get that going. And it's going to take a while to export these. And so we'll pause it here, and we'll pick it up here in a few seconds, and we shall continue. All right, it's time to get these images processed, and what we're going to be looking for here is simply taking them from their JPEG status and moving it over to Photoshop. Yes, believe it, among all other things, I'm using Photoshop to do this. Photoshop is what most people have, and I figured why not show people the tool that's really popular and show you how it can manage video with this. So here is the folder where it has all these images, and you can see I just left them in order with the standard naming criteria. It is important that you have the naming go up, so the numbers need to go up with this so Photoshop can recognize the sequence here. So we're simply going to go File, and we're going to go Open, and we're going to go find this item. So I'm going to go to my NEOWISE 3, go to my JPEGs, and then I just need to click on the first one, so 1882, and I can look at it 1538. Ah, that's much better. So it was inverted. So let's click on the first one, and then we have this little button down here. It says Image Sequence. So we want to click that, and when we're able to then grab that going and get that coming through, we hit open. It should then pick up all of those other images that are in the same folder. Now it's important that you have all of those images in the same folder. They are sequenced in the name, the file naming item, and then you're ready to go. I have found that 10 frames per second works pretty decent when I'm trying to do a time lapse that I share online. Experiment with some numbers that may work for you. If you want to have it, show real time, which obviously is not real time, but if you want to have it show more real time where you do 30 frames, that's fine. But I like the idea of 10 frames a second. It does slow it down a little bit. I shot 356 of these, so this is going to be a fairly long time lapse. It's going to take over 30 seconds for it to fully go through its cycle. So maybe on this one I want to experiment, make it a little smoother, and make it go 15 seconds on that, or 15 frames per second, I should say, on that. Again, experiment with a number that makes sense for you. I just want to do something. I'm thinking about how long do I really want to physically sit there and force someone to watch, to experience the whole thing. And if I would make you sit there for over 30 seconds, that's probably a little much. And then also at 15 FPS, we're going to see that thing transition faster. It will physically move faster. I have, 952 as my starting point and 1056 or so as my ending point. It will physically move faster as we're going through that. So maybe there's a greater level of interest in that because it's moving faster, and then that makes it happen quicker. You're done sooner, and you're not sitting there for so long. So let's see how this works out. All right, so it's going to come in. This sequence has gaps, it says. I'm not sure why it has gaps, why it's telling me it has gaps. Maybe there's something in the file naming or something. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue, and we'll see exactly what it means when it tells me it has gaps. So you can see it's just over 20 seconds down here in the timeline here in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and expand this with this little slider here so I can just see it a little more. And then to play it, let's go ahead and extend this up a little bit. All right, so to play, you just hit the space bar, And so it's going to kind of go through, and what I'm looking for, okay, we see the blinkies happening with the light painting that I was doing. I knew this would be an issue when I was doing this, but I was just like, you know what? I want to do my light painting anyway, because those are going to be cool images too. Whoa, there was a huge flash. I don't know what that one was about. I didn't use an actual flash, but I must have shown it towards the camera in there somewhere. And so that will be interesting to try and try and accommodate. Okay, so there's my culprit. Something happened right there. Let's try and isolate this, because the problem I have here in Photoshop, I'm not able to go in there very easily and just say, hey, take out like this one frame. Now, I can do actually a little bit. Let's zoom way in on this timeline, because I can do a little bit of cutting around and whatnot. So if I were to go back one frame, okay, where that is, and I should be able to hit this cut button, so split at playhead. So it has now split the item in two. And then I go back over to this one. All right, so we have one frame basically that is problematic for us. And so now I'm going to hit split at playhead again. I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I'm going to delete it. And you can see it scoochied it down. And now what I should be able to do, see how it just plays through? So I was able to get rid of that one frame. A part of me wants to experiment or look into it, investigate, whatever, and find out exactly what that issue was. And another part of me says, why? It doesn't really affect anything as far as the end result is concerned. So should I be concerned with it? I don't think so. It's not that big of a deal. All right, that's kind of fun with the airplane going through. So, all right, and then it makes it to the end and it quits. So let's start it over again and kind of look at it again. So again, here we have some airplanes and whatnot. Here comes the flashes with the light. I'm going with a flashlight and I'm painting the scene. And as long as we don't have that bright thing again, good. That just smooths right on through. That's beautiful. We're going to go back to the Finder and take our JPEGs folder, and we're going to go into Bridge. And then this is basically where we can just come through and we can take out the offending frames. So when I find those really bright ones, here we go with that one. So, well, maybe I'll have it show it to me again in the future. But with this, you just got to go frame by frame and delete them. And then here's two more. But certainly if I leave the gaps in there, Photoshop is going to say, are you crazy? And it'll ask me to, or it'll put those gaps in there like before. So we're going to fix that as well. A couple of somewhat dim ones coming through. That's fine. We're going to leave those. But I believe I caught all the really bright ones. Perfect. All right. Now let's Command A to select all. We're going to go to Tools, Batch Rename. And then I'm just going to say, we'll go time-lapse, and then I'll just run it at number 1, starting with my sequence number. So notice here what I'm doing. We'll rename them in the same folder. I could copy them to another folder, so I leave the originals where they're at and then make another copy elsewhere. I don't know that that's necessary to do. I'll just go ahead and rename these ones that I currently have. So we're going to start it with time lapse, and then it's going to be sequence number starting with 1. So here it's going to go from 1538 to time-lapse 001.jpg, and then 334 files are left behind. All right, so then if I hit rename here, bingo bango, it makes all those changes. Now I'm going to close Bridge, get back into Photoshop, hit Command O to open. Select the first one, hit image sequence, hit open. We'll do 15 frames a second again. Didn't give me the error at all. Let's go ahead and hit the space bar to play it. And then we should see those items coming in. Yeah, a few blinks here and there, but I'm not going to worry about it like I had already determined. And then it just comes in nicely. All right. Now this little oopsie over here, that's where Photoshop had a little bit of a problem rendering that frame. And so if you want to scrub back and forth, you can force it to render that frame. And then next time it plays, it'll just play perfectly smoothly. Everything has happened for it to be able to render it all and all that good stuff. Now again, if you want to take out more of those, because I did light painting and I want to take out more of them, I could take out more of them. But if you're skipping just one frame or so, it's not going to be that problematic. I don't think you're going to run into too much problems making that work, where it's still going to feel smooth to most folks. All right, time to render this. And let's go to export and render video. And now we're going to take a look at some of these settings, and we're just going to do document size. This is pretty much picked up from before. That's all good. It's going into NEOWISE time-lapse. That's exactly where I want to do it. And so I'm going to call it NEOWISE 3, because I think this is the third shot that I've done. So this is the time-lapse from that. And leaving all these settings is just kind of standard or normal or whatever. And we're definitely going to do all frames. You can select which ones you want to do and which ones you don't want to do. And then we'll hit the render, and then it'll take a few moments and it will render this video. All right, that is done. Let's go ahead and take a look. Oh, you know what? I put it in the NEOWISE time-lapse, which is this folder here, accidentally. And here it is. So it's a separate video that I can post to YouTube or Facebook or whatever else, Instagram, what have you. It's ready to go, and there we have it. We can see a few of those jumps where I skipped a few frames, but again, I think most people aren't going to really pick that out and be like, hey, what's going on? What's interesting too, I just noticed now as I'm watching this, that windmill is actually turning a little bit, a couple of times, like right there it turned a little bit. Oh, that's really cool. All right, that finally does it, wraps it up. Kind of a longish video, but it showed you some ideas of what we can do and what didn't work. Sometimes you get an idea, is it going to work out? And I showed you some of the challenges we had. Thanks so much for watching. I encourage your feedback down there in the body, in the comments area. Let me know what you think. Always looking forward to some conversation. And until next time, happy shooting.